Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. I'm Sally Allsop, the committee member responsible for running our webinar programme. So this morning, we're delighted to welcome Daniel Singham of Yondr Data Solutions and ICG member Sonal Malkan, who will be talking to us about Colour of Research, or CORE, CORE advocates for the inclusion of ethnic professionals in the market research industry. Daniel is the Commercial Director at Yondr Data Solutions, on the steering committee for CORE, and represents CORE on the MRS EDI Council. Daniel has been in the industry for 19 years, and his specialism is in all things quant. Sonal is a qualitative researcher and behavioural science consultant with experience across private, public and third sectors. She's passionate about using research to make a difference to groups considered to be marginalised in society. In our webinar today, Daniel and Sonal will be telling us who and what Colour of Research is and how it supports the industry and inclusive research. As usual, there'll be a Q&A session at the end when you're encouraged to turn on your camera, on your webcam, and raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question and join the discussion, or alternatively, just type in your question in the chat box and I'll read that out for you instead. Okay, so we are delighted that today's webinar has been kindly sponsored by Yondr Data Solutions, a trusted fieldwork and data collection company offering numerous services such as UK international online data collection, advanced analytics, CATI, dashboards and visualization, AI technology and omnibus services. Before I hand over to Sonal and Daniel, here are some more events that we've got lined up for you. So we've got a busy schedule for you this autumn. Don't forget that we're able to offer great value sponsorship opportunities for all our webinars and online events. You only need to contact Lucy if you want to know more about that. And now I'm going to hand over to Daniel and Sonal.
Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Appreciate you taking time out of your work to join the webinar. The good news for all of you, if you're busy, you can at least multitask, but I won't, unfortunately, be able to do that. So you do have my full attention. Just going to share my screen. If I can just have someone confirm they can see it.
Yep, that's fine.
Great. So as we just heard, we're going to talk to you a little bit about Colour of Research, who we are, what we do, how we support the industry, and then we're linking it slightly in with the importance of representation and research. So as you can see down the bottom there, that's our mission. It's to be seen and heard in an industry we love, but are currently underrepresented in. You may know some of these people. This is the Colour of Research Steering Committee. Tatinder and Anne are our co-chairs, and then Sia, Graham, Charlene, Raj, and myself support. And between us, we've all got various different tasks that we do. At any point, you can always reach out to any of these individuals if you know them, or you can go to the Colour of Research website and use the general connection box. So Colour of Research was born, I would say, in 2020, like most. I mean, it seems a long time ago and a whole different world ago, but we were in something called lockdown. And I guess a lot of people had a lot of time on their hands, which is a good thing because a lot of initiatives within not just the research industry, but just in life came out of lockdown, which still run today. And Colour of Research is one of them. And it started with a group of like-minded individuals from a variety of ethnic backgrounds who came together. And the aim was to champion racial diversity in the research industry. And ultimately, Colour of Research advocates for the inclusion of ethnic professionals in the MR industry. And together, a community was born, and we stand by the ethos that we are better together. Often we talk a lot about inclusivity, not just within the research itself, but also within businesses. Now, I know the majority of you will all be independents, but I'm sure along the way you have worked in much larger agencies and we always believe that, making it as inclusive as possible, there are statistics to prove and evidence that as a business, being inclusive will only have commercial benefits and benefits in general for the business. And we are a hub for all things concerning ethnic diversity within the market research industry. We aim to provide guidance and encouragement, and we build meaningful connections to enable growth and development. And I'm shortly going to share with you some examples of what we've done. We are part of the MRS, along with a lot of other groups such as Women in Research, MRS Pride, and so on. And there's a slide on that later down. But I'd start by saying sometimes it's when you think about different groups, so MRS Pride, for example, SEG, Women in Research, Colour of Research, you may be part, you might fall into one of those communities or one of those groups, you may not. But I'd always say, in order to have empathy or understand it from someone else's perspective, it's always good to try and put yourself in someone else's shoes. So I do have an example. I've got a friend who's in his mid-40s. He has been in the industry since he was 21, so that's 20 plus years. He's a white male in his mid-40s, and he attended one of the very first Women in Research events. Now, Women in Research has been going for many, many years, predominantly, obviously, supporting women. So you can imagine that the events will have majority women, but men can go and men do go. But the very first one, he turned up as an ally, and he was the only male in the room. Now, he said no one ever made him feel uncomfortable. No one ever said anything to him, but he naturally just felt like awkward, uncomfortable himself, just because all around him was women and he was the only male. And he said in his life, that was the first time ever, being a white male in his mid-40s, that he'd ever experienced something like that. And after that particular incident, which happened a few years ago, his whole mentality changed around supporting different groups and being involved. And now he's highly involved in numerous groups. But that all came out of attending an event where he didn't know he was going to be the only male. He only knew that when he got there. But he said up until that point, it just wasn't a thing for him. It just isn't something he thought about. It wasn't something he discussed with anyone. He used to see the various groups and, of course, be an ally and support, but he didn't really do anything about it because he just hadn't experienced it. But that particular incident in his life changed his mentality completely. And he even went as far as saying it changed his mentality as a human being, the way he talks, the way he thinks, and the way he does things. So it's always good to try and put yourself in someone else's shoes, to try and understand whatever it is the challenges might be for them, based on their gender or their age or their ethnicity or their sexuality or whatever it may be. So how do we support the industry? We do quite a lot, actually. We are a group of volunteers, just like the majority of these MRS groups. So we do it alongside our day job. So a lot of what we do, we try and be realistic. We believe in, if we're going to do something, do it properly rather than just doing something as a tick boxing exercise, which often things can be done. So we're quite strong in that. But we do job posts for agencies free of charge on our website. So if you were to go to the Colour of Research website and you went to our job board, you will see job adverts from the likes of BBC and Savanta at the moment. Not that any of you are looking for jobs, but that's just an example. And one of the reasons we offer this as a free service is the majority of our audience will be people of colour. So the advert will, they will see this advert, and if it's of interest to them, it gives them an opportunity to apply, and for that particular agency to have the opportunity to make their recruitment process as diverse as possible. We do lunch and learn workshops where we talk about inclusive culture and inclusive research. We have done it with the likes of a company called The Mix and D&M, or previously known as Davis and McKeer. And we are currently in talks with Savanta and 2CV and Magenta and others about doing it. The workshops have been incredible. Often what we talk about when it comes to anything ED&I, sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about certain topics. And I'm going to make a statement here, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I would say I often do sometimes feel sorry for white people, because I know that in your head, if you want to say something, you sometimes might think, "Oh, can I say that? You know, am I going to be judged? Is it the right thing to say? Is it the wrong thing to say?" And sometimes you keep it to yourself because words get branded very easily in today's world. So we always start by making that point to make everyone be aware that this is a closed environment. Feel free to give your opinions. If you're not sure of something, feel free to talk about it. Now, as you'll know, with businesses, we all have meetings, but you tend to talk about the day-to-day. So I'm the commercial director at Yonder Data Solutions. I have a weekly meeting with my sales team, and we talk about business. You have to sometimes go outside of that if you want to have a session about something different, such as ED&I. But the downside to it, it's not that it's not important, but as you all know, the day-to-day work just is the priority, right? If you've got projects to deliver, surveys to script, field work to run, data to deliver, numbers to achieve, that will always be the priority. So you try and find a time where you think it might be quiet, and maybe we can get everyone in the room and talk about it. Don't know about all of you, but for us, that time never really comes. It's just always the same all year round. So when we facilitate these lunch and learn workshops, it's really interesting that these agencies are specifically putting time out aside from the day-to-day role. They put everybody in the room, and the conversations that they've had have been amazing. I mean, D&M, one of the senior directors, said that he has never had this conversation with his team members, all levels, so junior, medium, senior, middle management, and so on. And he said sometimes, he learned a lot about his team. He learned a lot about the way they think. He learned a lot about some of the things they want to do. And he said if he didn't have that session with Color of Research, these conversations would never have happened. And off the back of it, they were able to make business decisions. I think some of them created an internal DEI committee. Some of them have now put budget aside to make sure that people within their teams can attend the various MRS group events that take place. And all of this stems from us basically facilitating a workshop where these discussions can happen, not just from internally within the business, but also within the research that they do themselves. We have a mentoring and a mentee scheme. We do outreach with universities. So this is actually wider MRS work. Not sure about all of you, but I love what I do, but I'm not going to lie and say here that when I was 14 years old, I had this dream that I was going to work in market research. That certainly wasn't the plan. I think I wanted to be a pilot at one point, and then some other random jobs. But the word market research probably wasn't even in my vocabulary at the time. I accidentally fell into the industry, but I'm very happy that happened because 20 years later, I'm still here. I know I look 21, but I am almost double it, not close. But I've been in the industry quite a while, and I very much enjoy what I do. Now, it's very rare that you will find someone who says, I had a dream to be in market research. So what we are aware of, the industry is huge, but it is unknown. It's niche in the sense when you're at university and A levels and whatever, unless you know people in the industry, you're not really hearing about it. So we partner with the MRS and we go out to universities. I've spoken at my university. I attended the University of Westminster. I've gone there and done talks on what life is like in the world of market research. We've linked in with Brunel University, and we do outreach schemes wherever we can. And that's more trying to make people aware of the industry and that young people can have a successful career within the research industry. We do podcasts because we're big believers of lived experiences and success stories. Experience are more real when it comes from individuals and they can tell you about their stories. I think if you were to go on the Color of Research, you've got my lived experience podcast live on the website. So if you did want to get to know me a little bit better, feel free. Maybe when you're on a treadmill or going for a run, it's probably a good listen. And we do webinars where we can. So at the moment, it's Black History Month. So we will do something there. We've partnered with the Auras, and the webinar then was about careers, how different people have got to different points of their career and the different routes that they went through to get there. And in June, I'm happy to say we had our very first face-to-face event where the topic was on allyship. Allyship is really key. It's pretty much what I said at the start. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. If you're not part of that group, you are the most powerful person by being an ally. Because with anything in life, if you take women who are fighting for equal pay or more senior roles. We expect women to fight for that because they are women. But it'll be more powerful if men were also fighting on their behalf. Similarly with colour of research, it'll be more. If I think back to the riots a few months ago, up and down the country, people of colour were being targeted. But where it really almost came to an end is when they had the anti-protests against it, and actually a lot of the people in those protests were white people. And when when white people stood with them and said, we don't believe in these riots, lo and behold, it kind of shut down very quickly. So being an ally for any of the groups, I know this is about colour of research, but it's also to do with sexuality, gender, age, whatever it may be. Allyship is powerful because it's far more beneficial coming from someone within the group. And I can use working as an example. I'm the commercial director at Yondr Data Solutions. My job when I meet clients is to talk about why they should be working with Yondr Data Solutions. But it's far more powerful if I had a client give me a testimonial as to why they should work, because they will see someone from the outside of the group think, oh, actually, that's quite powerful. So very similar. So with the outreach scheme, as I mentioned, we present at universities. We try and link with ethnic minority students as well to try and increase the amount of diversity we have within the industry. We have an ethnic minority apprenticeship program in conjunction with the MRS. And we, call for change within the recruitment process. So, normally people would send in CVs, and I think a lot of companies now, they ask for CVs without, even names, genders, age, all of that, and they just read a blind CV, because then there can be no biases towards it, and it just makes things more fair, because then you really are choosing the right person for the job. We also look to increase the visibility of research professionals within the industry. So today is a prime example where I asked Sonal to join me on this, and after I've spoken, Sonal will give you a bit of information about her. So we do want to promote ethnic minorities within the industry, success stories. We have a speaker shortlist. We have a diversity directory. I've been in the industry for a long time. I actually started my industry in Australia, and I was there for about 7 years before I came back to the UK. And I noticed it was a very white industry. Now, I didn't have any issues. I never faced any racism. No one ever said anything to me, but you do feel it subconsciously. When I became part of CORE and I started looking at our database and looking at our events, I genuinely had no idea how many people of color we have in this industry. It's a lot more than we think, which is great. But again, this is why we're really happy we created Colour of Research, because by doing so, we found that out, because we invite people to join our database, we invite people to events. So it was a really useful thing for us. As I said, we do lunch and learn workshops, so inclusive research for both the research and the culture. It's an hour-and-a-half workshop, which we do with agencies. And as I said earlier, it's been really beneficial for the agencies that have been part of it. And like anything, we do need sponsorships for our outreach or our event sponsorships. Even having a Zoom license, right? We don't, we need sponsorships for all of that. So I'm happy to say that we have a lot of support from a lot of agencies, the likes of Yondr, Ipsos, Kantar, Savanta, The Mix. We've had a lot of people supporting us with our journey along the way, which enables us to be able to do the things that we want to do. So what we've achieved so far, we've paired up around, well, it'll actually be more than that now from the time I did this, but, around 35 mentors and mentees across all different levels. Senior leaders with more junior members of the industry. We give people the option whether they want a female mentor, a male mentor, whether they want a mentor person of color or whether a non-person of color. So there are a few options they have. We've done the workshops, we've done webinars, we've done our outreaches at schools and at universities, and we've done podcasts where we look to raise the profile of people in color within market research. So we've done quite a lot, and we still know there's a lot more to do and how much more we can support the industry, and we will continue to do that with all the support that we get from around us. So linking into the culture part, we're now just going to do a few slides on representation and research and the importance of it. So hopefully most of you know this, but there is a MRS representation in Research Steering Group, which is led by Rebecca Cole, who's the MD at Colbot Sky. And the reason it popped up is to try and make research as representative as it can. The only caveat I have for now is that this is all very much UK focused. Because in the UK, we all work here, we can control it a little bit more. The agencies that are based there have a lot more control. And to be fair to the MRS and the rules around us, there's a lot more we can do here. I mean, one of the caveats with anything, even if you're asking sensitive questions within the survey, as long as you have a prefer not to answer option, you can pretty much ask whatever you want. And the reason we say it's a UK focused, it's not the same in other markets. If I pick the likes of France and Germany, for example, you're not actually meant to be even asking ethnicity as a question within a survey. If you go to the Middle East, there'll be certain questions you're not allowed to ask. Similarly, in parts of Asia, like China and Japan, there'll be questions you can't ask. So there is a lot of what we're trying to do is based for the UK, but we do also, where possible, we're providing information about best practices for international markets as well. So, as you can see from that, this statement is from the representation and research group. So 30% of insight is lost through non-inclusive research, making the sector less impactful. So the aims of the group is to make research more robust and insightful by providing relevant and up-to-date resources and guidelines, and working to support practitioners in building capabilities and confidence in designing inclusive research. So we'll start with just national representative sample. Now, you all know what this means. There's numerous definitions. The one we use, just to keep it as simple as possible, is one that has a strong enough similarity to the population of the country being studied, so that the results will be valid, more robust, and more accurate. Representation matters because there are a lot of biases. There's subconscious biases as well. So it's really important that we use the right tools and the right methodologies to make the research as representative and inclusive as possible, ultimately aiming for the results to be as accurate and robust as possible. And we do a lot of political polling here, and you guys will all know this, but when you do political polls, for example, you need really robust numbers. Yeah, so like 20,000, 25,000, 30,000. And the reason you need that is you need enough numbers across the country to break down into different constituencies. You need enough numbers per constituency, then you need to break that down into different demographics within the constituencies, within the various LGAs. And that's how that's how we pan out who might win an election, for example, how many seats a particular party might get. So similarly, when you're doing general research as well, you need to make it as robust as possible from a representative angle, so that you can be confident that the data is reliable and giving you the best insights that it possibly can. Of course, if your particular audience is for females 18 to 34, then that's what it is. You don't need to sit there and think, oh, we better add some males into this just to make it more inclusive. It's if a particular product or service is for a particular audience, that's normal and fine. It's where it's more general research, or where you can take a particular topic and try and make that particular topic as representative as possible. So the considerations, organizations won't be able to get there overnight. It's a journey. Transparency about who is and who isn't represented in your research is something to think about. Acknowledging the limitations to the research you are doing, and a lot of that will come down to feasibility. So you'll all know about the term feasibility. So when you reach out to whichever suppliers are supporting you, whichever methodology it is, and you say, this is what I'd like to do, you can only really go with whatever that particular agency can do. So feasibility does come into play, and there's a lot of positive pressure on panel providers, for example, such as ourselves, to try and make our panels as representative and inclusive as possible. And I've got some examples coming up. And also when it comes to national representative, what does that even mean versus general population? So a lot of best practice recommendations won't be perfect. Doing something is better than doing nothing. And we want to be the best at getting better. And I have to say, as an industry in the last 4, 5, 6 years, we are definitely getting better, especially here in the UK, in representational research. It's been a big topic. A lot of providers are putting technology towards it, putting budget towards it to try and make it happen. And we're definitely a lot further along the way compared to other markets. And what we also need to keep in mind, especially here in the UK, the composition of the population will continue to evolve. I mean, the ethnic minority percentage is around 14% at the moment in the UK. So that's quite a big chunk. And it will continue to evolve across all demographics across the UK. So we always have to try and keep up to date with it as best as we can. So by having data that is representative, it gives us more accuracy. It gives us more inclusivity and fairness. We identify unique needs and solutions, reducing health and social disparities, ethical research practices, and cultural competence. So there's numerous reasons as to why representative research is a good thing. And I do have a couple of case studies that I'm going to quickly run through you. But if we just go back to NatRep, when I started in the industry, I think it was actually gender and age, NatRep. At some point, we all agreed that we should add region, so we did. Then along the way, we decided that we should add social grade, so we did. And in 2020 for us, and I think a lot of others as well, we introduced ethnicity as a quota. So now all of our NatRep quotas in the UK, for example, are NatRep on gender, age, region, social grade, ethnicity, which is great. So you can see just from there how far we've come along. Now, in an ideal world, you'd be representative across everything, but it comes down to being realistic and also about the feasibility of doing so. So sexuality, income, whether it's personal or household, children, cars in the household, pets, and so on. So there's so many different factors that we could keep going. But we need to be realistic about it. If we wanted to be as representative as possible within your demographics in your survey, you could easily be asking about 15 minutes of survey questions just on demographics before you actually get to the main part of your survey, because there's so many things to take into consideration. So the most important point here is to be realistic. So aim for the best, but be realistic what can be done. And when we were doing age, gender, region, and social grade, we were overlooking minority groups from ethnic minorities to LGBTQIA and those with disabilities. So we need to take all of this into consideration whenever we come across briefs to think about what is the best way to solve this brief and making it as representative as possible. Just one example for me. So I was born and raised in London, so I'm British, but my parents are from Sri Lanka. There's nothing Sri Lankan about me apart from possibly the way I look. I'm not cultural at all, not for any reason other than my parents just decided they weren't going to teach us the language and so on. So there's nothing Sri Lankan about me. I've only been there once in my lifetime, but whenever I fill in a survey, even this census or whatever it may be, when it comes to an ethnicity question, I'm always British other. I've never seen Sri Lankan as an option anywhere. So we had a brief from an agency a few months ago, and they wanted to, it was South Asian Community Month back in August, and they were doing a study on that community. And the communities they were looking at were Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Indian, and Sri Lankan. So I told them that Bangladeshi, Pakistani, and Indian, that's not a problem. We can target on those. It's all good. Sri Lankan, we cannot target. It's just not been on our profiling. And they were like, okay, no problem. We'll just put another. But I spoke to the business and I said, look, it's the 4th largest South Asian community in the UK. We've got Indian, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi. Can we just add Sri Lankan into our profiling and into our ethnicity question? We were able to make a decision on the spot. So we introduced it. So when I went back to the agency with my proposal, I added that in. I said, it's not going to help you for this particular study, but we have now added Sri Lankan as an option in our surveys. Now we won the study, and I'm not saying that's the reason, but this is a big issue for some people. If you're Sri Lankan and you get frustrated about you never see it, such a small change can have such a big impact. And it, you know, for us as a business, adding that to our surveys and adding that to our panel, it takes less than 10 minutes. But we did it because it's the 4th largest Asian community in the UK, so we thought we would. Now, again, this is where we need to be realistic as well. If you look at how many nationalities there are, or think about how many nationalities within the UK, I mean, that list would be quite extensive. So we need to be, again, this is where realism comes into place. We will increase it as we go, as and when the numbers get bigger, as and when particular groups become more in demand, shall I say. But where we can, we always try to make small changes that can have much bigger impacts. And the phrase we always use, you'll hear this across the MRS, is progress over perfection. We all aim to be perfect, but we know, there's a lot you have to do before you even get near that. So progress is the most important thing. And I always say, as long as you believe within yourself that you are doing the right thing, then, that's the most important thing, and that's all we can ask. So if we look at national representative samples online, can an online national representative sample be representative? Well, probably not, because there's a whole chunk of people who are digitally excluded. There is a whole chunk of people who we define as narrow internet users, digitally disengaged, older population, more vulnerable, those with disabilities, mental health. So if you're doing an online survey only, and you're claiming it's national representative, then you have to be specific and say this was done online. Talk about the methodology, because the reality is you've missed out a whole heap of people, so it isn't representative of everyone. And this is right down the bottom there. You're going to see qual and quant. It's about mixed methodologies. You have to define. So when you publish work, you have to define what NatRep was, because previously everyone would just say NatRep, but there's no definition to it. So now you actually need to define. How are you defining NatRep? Are you defining it by age, gender, region? Are you defining it by age, gender, region, social grade, ethnicity? Are you defining it as online, offline, mixed methodology? How are you defining it? Because they're trying to get very strict on the way work is being published, and whoever's taken actions from those results are aware of what that data actually represents, rather than just claiming it's national representative. So I've got a case study here. I was approached by a media agency, and they simply wanted to do a study on media behavior. They wanted to compare 500 white people versus 500 ethnic minorities. Very, very straightforward study. It would have cost a couple of £1,000 probably. It would have probably been wrapped up, I'd say, within a week. Everyone would have been happy. They would have got what they wanted. We would have delivered successfully, and job done. But I challenged the brief. And I'm not saying challenge every brief, but where there's an opportunity to do so, you should not be afraid to do it. And I certainly wasn't in this case. So I challenged the brief, and I simply asked, are all ethnic minorities the same? Is black, brown is brown? And then I used white as an example. And the example I had is, if I walked onto the street today and I went up to a white male and I just said to him, "Hi, mate, I just want to speak to a German today. Have you got a few minutes?" And he turns around to me and says, "Mate, I'm British, I'm not German." And I say, "But you're all the same, right?" I mean, it's not going to end well, is it? So the question I had was 500 white, fine. If you're claiming, if you want 500 English white, fine. But ethnic minorities, how are you defining them? And they said, "Oh, Pakistani, Bangladesh, Indian, African, well, whatever you can get, basically." So this made them think a little bit. So I gave them advice, and they went back to their client who hadn't thought about it. And I told them what's possible. And we ended up dividing the 500 ethnic minorities into different groups. So African, Caribbean, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladesh, English, and Polish. We added Polish as well, just to give us another sub-sector of the population to compare to. And that's what they went with. The project gave them so much insights that they wouldn't have had if they went with the original brief. But because they broke down the 500 ethnic minorities into different backgrounds, they had far more insight. The study rolled out to other markets, which was never the plan. It became a tracking study. So from that, you can see there was massive benefit from the actual research. And there's also commercial benefits. Now, there's nothing wrong in, if the research is right, you are going to get commercial benefits, and there is nothing wrong in talking about that, because all our jobs, for whoever you work for yourselves, you work to earn money, right? So where if it has a commercial benefit, there was nothing wrong in saying that. Now, I remember talking to one person at an agency where he said, "Oh, I didn't want to say that because if I said that, it looks like we're ticking the box." And I said, "No, you're doing the right thing with the research, but with that, the benefits will come with it across the research and the commercial benefits. So it's perfectly fine to talk about it and to think about it. So when you're thinking about your research and your representativity of it, there is nothing wrong in also thinking about how this could commercially benefit you, your client, whoever it may be. But the key there was I challenged the brief. And then one other thing I wanted to share here was we talk about 65 plus a lot in the UK, and the upper age group has always been 65 plus. Now there's 11 million people plus in the UK who are 65 plus. So what we did, and the MRS challenged us. I'm part of the ED&I Council, and MRS Jane Frost was challenging us on, can we make the 65 plus more representative? So straight away, I went back to the business after my meeting and I said, look, guys, we do 65 plus. Can we trial 65 to 74 and 75 plus? So we've been doing that for the last 2 months, and we piloted it on our omnibus. We did 4 waves of the omnibus, and I'm very happy to say that literally as of this week, we have now launched our new quotas, which are going to be 18, 24, 25, 34, 35, 44, 55, 64, 65, 74, 75 plus as the upper band. Now, we saw some key highlights. Over 75s enjoy greater financial comfort. Over 65s are not necessarily all retired. Health challenges increase with age. Over 75s are more likely to enjoy a mortgage-free retirement. Now, some of this obviously is common sense. You'd look at it and think, yeah, that makes sense. But, that's the whole purpose of the hypothesis, right? You have a hypothesis, but you still need the evidence to prove that what you think is true. If we did continue to do 65 plus as the upper age band, you are putting a good 20, 30-year gap altogether. And there are differences. Now, if you want to know those differences, you're going to have to break it up. So we were challenged, we've accepted the challenge, and we're happy to say that it has gone really well for us. So now we're pushing back on the representation and research group, and we're saying, look, we've done it. Now we need a lot of other agencies to follow. Because if we can all do it, and we've proven, so again, I use the term feasibility. Now, a lot of people talk about feasibility. We can show you the evidence that it's feasible to make it that rep, and the insights that you get from it are incredible. So representation research is across multiple factors. And I'm really excited about this, the 65 plus, because to be able to do 75 plus and prove that it makes a difference. So it gives people more conversation with their clients about why it's important to do this and how robust and more accurate the data is going to be. So in summary, I would say challenge the brief if you can. Quotas, think about it, talk to the experts, but be realistic. Think about the methodology. Sometimes it needs to be mixed to get the harder to reach audiences. And in terms of core allyship, think about what it means to you. How do you think you as an individual can help? I would say follow and participate with the various groups. Here are the various groups. There's a representation and research group. There's the MRS Pride, Unlimited, Social Inclusion Group, Women in Research, Colour of Research. I would always advise, follow them on LinkedIn, follow the MRS. All of these companies do webinars, and they all focus on particular groups. Depending on what could be of interest to you, maybe you're doing a brief about a particular group, such as the LGBTQIA audience. It would be worth talking to MRS Pride about getting some advice on that. So there's a lot to be doing there. What we'll do at this point is I am going to hand over to Sonal, who can just explain a little bit about who she is and Colour of Research and what she does.
Thanks so much, Daniel. So as Daniel said, he reached out to me actually when I announced I was going freelance and provided many words of wisdom. He and many others suggested that I sign up to the ICG community because that is what you are. It's what I've realised, a community. He also said that he'd be there to provide any help that was needed as he wanted me to succeed. And honestly, if that's not championing people from ethnic backgrounds in the research industry, I don't know what is. It was in true cool fashion that he just reached out to me and got in touch, which I'll forever be grateful for. So you might be left wondering a little bit about me. So my name is Sonal, as you're well aware by this point, and I've been in market research for around 5 years now. So a little bit of background context. I'm from a little town called Sittingbourne, but have been living in Southeast London for around 7 years. My mum is from India, my dad is from Kenya, but actually, like Daniel, I wouldn't say I'm very cultured at all, but want to get so more as I'm growing up. So when I was growing up, my sister and I were raised in a predominantly white town, and I'll be quite honest with you, it wasn't really something that I was aware of as I was growing up. I started to become more conscious about this when I was around 14, 15 years of age, and started noticing that this little town didn't really have people from ethnic backgrounds like myself. But then I went to university, did my business studies degree, got my master's in social psychology, and for the first time, I saw people from a variety of different backgrounds, which was really refreshing. And actually, as silly as it sounds, for the first time, I actually felt seen. It was the first time I felt seen, the first time I actually felt valued from people of my own age. So I'm imagining that you're left wondering how I got into market research. So after my master's, I worked in the psychology department at the University of Surrey as a postgrad researcher. And whilst I really loved my time there, I kind of felt like my spark was dampening a little bit. My creativity was kind of getting a little bit lost. So I did reach out to recruiters, and they mentioned my skill set would suit the world of market research. In all honesty, I didn't really know that this existed. I didn't know it was an option. So, like Daniel, I guess I kind of fell into it, which I'll forever be grateful for. I have worked with some great agencies like 2CV, the Payroll Architects, and Thinks Insight and Strategy. And I've been freelance for around 4 months now, so fairly new to the ICG community, but really hoping to meet many of you as I go on this journey. My experience so far has been really broad ranging. So, as was mentioned earlier, I'm a qualitative researcher, but I'm also a behavioural science consultant. But I've done a lot of things from deconstructing the sensory experience of chocolate tablets, understanding the triggers and barriers to electric vehicles or people living more sustainably, understanding disabled people's lived experiences of using public transport during COVID, understanding how people perceive extremism, and also helping brands with general comms to nudge people towards doing a desired behaviour. So one thing that I did notice when I entered the world of market research was, again, how unrepresentative the industry was for people like myself. As Daniel's mentioned throughout, we often go on about how important it is for our research to be representative. But if you think about it, we are the ones that are often conducting this research, right? We're often speaking to members of the public, and therefore, surely it's just as important for the very people doing the research to actually have a little bit of representation in it, to ensure that the actions that we're suggesting really do have an impact at a wider societal level. And one fun fact, I don't really think it's fun actually, one fact, when I was first trying to get into the industry, I remember sending my CV to 2 agencies, not going to name and shame them. I didn't hear back. However, I remember reading something that mentioned that there can be biases, as Daniel mentioned, if you have your name on the CV. So shouldn't have done it, but I did change my name on the CV after a few months, sent my CV back to the same agencies. No lie, within 2 days, I heard back from both of them. I don't know if it was a bias, if they didn't happen to see it the first time around when I did send it in, but it's something that's really played on my mind since, and something that I often think about to this day. So coming back to Colour of Research, I actually stumbled across Colour of Research on LinkedIn. I think it was around 2020 when I've kind of felt a bit deflated at this point. I was kind of feeling like there wasn't many people like myself in the industry that didn't necessarily have not the same background, but a similar background. And I was starting to feel a little bit sidelined. And little did I know, there's actually quite a few of us in the market research world. I just wasn't aware of it. So it was really refreshing to see that Colour of Research were advocating for us and bringing people from diverse ethnic backgrounds together, and we're just championing inclusion. It was just so refreshing to see at that point in time. And Daniel did mention the the first face-to-face event that they held this year, where people came together, whether they were from ethnic backgrounds, whether they were not. And it was really enlightening just to see people there that really cared about this going forwards. And like Daniel was saying earlier, it's really good to always try and put yourselves in other people's shoes. And particularly if you're a qualitative researcher, you're moderating. It's what we tend to do day to day. But I also think from the angle of putting yourself in other people's shoes, if they're from a different background of yours, it can just go such a long way. And the smallest actions can make the biggest difference. And I think in this world, it doesn't necessarily matter how junior you are, how senior you are. If you've got a voice that is heard, it's so important to just speak up about things that you're passionate about or things that you think you could possibly drive a change in. And I think that that's important with how we navigate the world of market research, but also how we navigate the world personally as well. And that is enough about me now. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Sonal, and welcome to the ICG. I hope you're enjoying being a member. It's great to see you anyway. Before we open it up to questions, can I just bring in Annabelle Phillips, who is the ICG representative for diversity and inclusion? Is that the right term, Annabelle? Who's going to talk to us a little bit about the pledge. Go ahead, Annabelle.
Brilliant, and also thanks so much, both of you, for coming to talk to us all about CORE and the work you do, and to bring this to light to our members. I think it's really important. I just wanted to really quickly say about the pledge, and I feel like actually I'm not going to eat too much into the opportunities you've got to ask questions, but just to let you all know that as I think most of you know, last year's summer, not last summer, but summer last year, we responded to the MRS pledge that they have to do an independence pledge, because we felt it was really important that we had a pledge that that our members, that all of us feel that we're able to sign up to. And also we do increasingly know that clients and procurement are looking at things like pledges and our commitments to EDI, as well as other aspects and the environment and all sorts. So we felt it was really important for us to not be at a disadvantage because we weren't able to sign up to some of these things. And some of the things in the pledge are irrelevant to micro businesses, right? Or independent consultants, micro businesses. I mean, I can quite happily put my hand on my heart and say, yes, I practice pay parity because I'm only paying myself. So that's fine. I'm totally ticking that box. It's not really relevant for us, is it? So we did do an independence pledge that we felt was relevant for us. But I have listened to some of the feedback that said some people said they still didn't feel necessarily able to sign up to that. Some of the things still felt like outside of their control. So in the meantime, because we've been quiet on the pledge, we have been rewriting it with the pledge committee and with the MRS. So we have all their approvals. And also, as you all know, we've now got a beautiful, shiny new logo. So we've also been redoing the stamp that goes alongside it. So I just want you all to know that we are going to be sending it out with to everybody. Again, the new pledge, and also the other thing as well, as I was doing, making sure that people who have signed up to the pledge were happy with the new version, because obviously it's really important if you've signed up that you're happy with the new version and happy to stay signed up. So in the next couple of weeks, we will be launching out. Look out for it. We'll be sending out the new logo to the people who already signed up to it. If you are a member of the MRS and the ICG, you can make the choice as to whether you want it to be via the MRS or via us. The difference is, I think it probably gives you it, the MRS, it's pretty much it's the same pledge, but it's just, you've got that sort of stamp of the MRS. I think the thing is, it's about, saying that we have a commitment. As Daniel's been saying, it's not saying that we're all there completely, but it's saying we're working towards it. It's, we're working towards perfection and all that sort of stuff. So I'm trying to speak really quickly to not take up too much time, but now I've kind of got a bit stuck. So so anyway, there you go. Look out for it. And it is, if this is something that you're interested in, I really recommend that you look at signing up to it and signing up to pledge, because as I say, it really is something that we are getting increasing client feedback from, that clients are looking at this, particularly clients who are members of the MRS and are hearing, more about this as they go through. Okay, I'll leave you to Q&A with the other two now, and I've read, I've taken, I've gate crashed enough now.
Thank you, Annabelle. That was brilliant. So we've got a few minutes left, about 10 minutes left. So has anybody got any questions for Daniel or for Sonal? Please raise your hands, turn on your video. Okay, so I'm going to kick it off. I don't know if Daniel or Sonal have an opinion on this, but I was interested that you pointed out that in France and Germany, on surveys, they can't even ask about ethnicity. So presumably there are good reasons for them choosing to go down that route. What are your feelings on that? Do you think that's the right way to go, or do you think the way we do it in the UK is better for ethnic minorities?
Sonal, I'll let you answer as well, just for your views, but I'll go first. For me personally, I have no issues being asked my ethnicity. So I do like the way we do it here in the UK. I'm not offended by it. I mean, you're asking, and again, remember, when you ask someone their ethnicity, it's also white people as well. I mean, everyone gets asked the question. You just select what you are. So this isn't just about ethnic minorities. It's about all of us as people. I personally never get offended by it. And I like the way the UK does it. I'm not a fan of the way France and Germany does it. I don't know, Sonal, if you have an opinion on this.
I agree as well. I'm never offended if someone asks my ethnicity. If anything, it shows they're curious and they want to learn more. I think if you were doing a study in France or Germany, or including people from France and Germany for your research, and you needed a particular ethnic group, depending on the type of research, that could be quite tricky. So I do really like the way that we do things in the UK, but I appreciate I might be a little bit biased there.
Okay, any other questions? Let me have a look and see what's in the chat. Thanks, Dan and Sonal. Apologies that I have to go. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Really valued hearing about your experiences and how we can use them as examples to help shape more inclusive research spaces. Can you send the pledge to the community as an email, please, Annabelle? Yes, I'll be sending it out to everyone via email. Any questions at all, anyone?
I don't have a question. I do have it's sort of a comment, Sonal. I do a lot of work for a French company, and often when you've recruited here and in other places, they clearly can't ask the question in France, but they're absolutely fixated on the names in your list and make all sorts of judgments, which, and they haven't asked, or probably they can't, and they haven't asked here, but they're making judgments looking at the name. And
So
I think it's
say
tricky.
they're making judgments. Sorry to cut you off
Well,
there.
they're obviously looking for a mix of background and making judgments by the first names that they have on the grid and that sort of thing, which I feel a bit uncomfortable with, because anyway.
That's
Just
really interesting to know, actually.
went through my head. Sorry, it's not a question as such, but great to hear from you both.
It's presenting a challenge for them, obviously, in ensuring that their site is representative. Judith, you've got your hand up. Do you want to add something? You're on mute, by the way.
Thank you. Hi, thanks so much for that. It's really lovely to hear both of you talk about it. And just sort of picking up on Annabelle's point a bit really as well, which is, as micro businesses and independents, sometimes a lot of the stuff around EDI doesn't feel terribly relevant. There's not much we can do about it. And actually, having just filled out the survey as well, there's quite a few questions that aren't necessarily so relevant. So I guess my question is, beyond just general allyship, what can independents and small businesses do?
Tough question.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, allyship is obviously the most powerful thing that can happen. I mean, from a research perspective, I've always say, like, whether you're larger agency or independents, the briefs you get, you can always still challenge them and try and see how representative they can be, and that's from a research perspective. So that would apply across, larger agencies, smaller agencies. In terms of the MRS and so on, I mean, really, it would be trying to attend the events as best as you can, and even something like this. I was actually approached by Lucy to do this. So being approached to host these sorts of webinars and to be able to do this is also another a great way of doing it. You know, we can also pick particular topics within representational research or ethnic minorities and so on, and go, you know, delve in further. What I would also say as well is I gave a couple of examples of some of the work we've done. And when you guys do work yourselves, whether it's EDI, ethnic minorities, representational research, I mean, even within yourselves, like having webinars and just sharing that, you know, if it's not confidential, you know, just sharing the case study and what you got out of it and how it helped. Because I think we always say, like, who's responsible for representation and research? Some people will say, well, it's the suppliers, right? Because you're the guys that have to supply it. So if you can supply it, then you need to do it. But I say, you know, we're all responsible for it, right? We need to do our bit, but we also need to challenge. If we need to, I'll use the term educate our clients, because some of them have been doing work for so long that sometimes it's just keep doing what we're doing, why change it? So it's trying to educate them on the benefits commercially and from an insight perspective on why making change will help.
Brilliant, thank you. Just another question, possibly more for the ICG. Do we know if there's an ICG on the sort of committee for all of the special interest groups? Because if not, there probably should be, right?
Good question. Is Annabelle still here? No, she's gone.
No, I'm here. I am here. I'm just trying to remember who they all are now. There is good representation actually across most of them. I will go back and check that out. I know there is, like, there's me and Ella on the SCG one. There's Sonal on the core. I need to double check on Pride.
Yes.
But we're always having like quite conversations, and also we're on the board, so we have that connection. There's a lot of ICGs on inclusion, on the open inclusion or unlimited.
Limited, okay. Oh yeah,
So,
of course.
there's quite a few on that one. So I think there is quite a good representation across the board actually. But
yeah, good. Just because the issues just always do play out differently for us indies, don't they?
Yeah.
So, you know.
No, absolutely. And I actually have to say, I did feedback as well on the survey about, and they said that they were going to do it, and that yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that didn't get pulled up. There's still quite a lot that isn't relevant, but I did try and say, look, you know, that that is a bit frustrating, but I've tried. There's only so much I can do.
Yeah, I put it in the comments as well. So. And I know that they actually just filter us all out for a lot of the results anyway. So perhaps it, you know, doesn't matter so much. But I don't know. It's frustrating to be asked questions that aren't relevant to you.
I think, I mean, we are actually, as the ICG, we are having more conversations with MRS anyway about all of this stuff, and about and definitely I feel like we're working sort of more closely with them, and we are really trying to. And I think because the problem is, it's like what we are is actually. We are the long tail. So you've got the big agencies, and they're big and they take up a big bulk of it. But then we are like a long tail. And there are a lot of us, like we are en masse. I mean, just in our lot, with there's 400 members, right? And then there's lots of sort of micro business, just one step up. So we are having more of those conversations and getting more of our. I'm throwing my toys out of my pram quite a lot, and going what about us? So yeah, they are listening more now.
Exciting the new place. Really exciting.
Cool.
We've got very little time left, but just very quickly, Matt and Andrew, I think you both have questions that you wanted to ask, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid. Andrew, do you want to go first?
Okay. But thanks both. That was really interesting. So if I go to Yondr, I know you're doing a great job, and the data is representative on ethnic background as well as all the usual standard things that we've been using. But heaven forbid when we're not using Yondr, what is the go-to source of the latest, most robust ethnic background profile beyond going to out-of-date government data? Which source would you point independents towards?
So to your first point, I'm not aware of anyone who doesn't use Yondr. Sorry, just
nor do I.
Yeah, so a bit of an irrelevant question, isn't it? Now,
no, sorry.
I would say, so the representation and research. So Rebecca Cole, who heads up the representation and research steering committee, they've been doing a lot of work digging on quotas. So I would certainly go there as a first step. And with any supplier you're working with, you can always, I mean, you should ask them what do they use, because often they'll ask you to provide the quotas. But you can say to them, just out of curiosity, can you confirm to me what your quotas are for national representative samples?
But if I'm running my own surveys, my own qual, and I'm just using
Yeah.
I'm just doing sample only, I control everything my end, so I just need to know
But
which
you're still using their panel, aren't you?
I'm still using their panel, and
Yeah.
it will have its inherent skews, no doubt,
Yeah.
whether how good they are or not. But setting quotas at my end can override that to a point. I just need the confidence I'm using the right quotas.
Yeah, so the representation and research group. Sorry, someone.
Sorry, sorry. Sorry to jump in on this, but my understanding is that they are Rebecca's pulling together like an infographic thing as well, which is showing how the profile has changed over the last 100 years, but also to have the most up-to-date thing. Now, I haven't seen that coming out yet, but I know that I've talked about it, and so as soon as we see anything like that, I'll make sure that I kind of filter that stuff and share that stuff around as soon as it comes out. Sorry, Daniel.
No, that's all good.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, Matt, what's your question quickly, and then we are going to have to.
It was just about you mentioned the event in June. I was just wondering, are you planning more face-to-face events, and are they going to be more regular? Because it's great, I think, to meet and chat informally about things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we definitely have more. We actually have one coming up, which we're planning for the end of October. It's interesting. There's an agency called Word on the Curb who specialize in ethnic minority research, and they did an election piece, and their study was really interesting. I can't remember the exact percentage, but there's X percentage of young ethnic minorities in particular who want to leave the UK. So they're doing that paper in an event at the end of this month. But when you'll see the details when we publish them. That's one, and we'll definitely be doing another one probably early spring. But we aim to do 2 a year.
Okay.
Fantastic. Right, I think we do have to wrap it up now. Thank you so much, Daniel and Sonal, for talking to us today and telling us all about CORE and your experiences. It's been really interesting. Lots of very positive feedback in the chat box. But hope to welcome you back again maybe next year for another update. It would be really, I think, really interesting to hear what you're doing.
No worries. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. Bye bye.
Bye bye.